Right then.
It makes it sound as if it's like the first time we're doing it.
I was waiting for you. It's like, why do I have to start it all the time? Why don't you take the baton?
Man, because I thought you were
okay, come on. Let's just get straight into this.
It's my presence just bringing that much vibe.
Dan Dolan's here today.
The mighty Dan Dolan.
Dan Dolan.
Look at that beard.
We're big fans of Dan Dolan. And those of you that are listening that don't know Dan, he's a wedding videographer based in Lichfield.
That's it, yeah.
And me and Igor both had the pleasure of working with you quite a few times now.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I'm going to say he's one of the good guys.
He is definitely one of the good guys.
Such
a pleasure to work with.
When you see it on the sheet, like, oh, have you got a videographer? And it's like, yeah, Dan Dolan. I'm like, yeah, great, yeah, brilliant.
I know that I'm going to get a bear heg today.
It's going to be a good day. I thought we'd start this episode off by actually just reading. We asked Dan, didn't we, for like just a bit of a bio, just to give us a bit of background before we started kind of prepping today's episode, and it made us both laugh, didn't it? So I thought we'd just share it with everybody first, and then we'll just dissect it and see where it goes.
Strap your seatbelts in, people.
I asked Dan just to give us a little bit of a bio, and this was his response, and this is going to give you an amazing idea of what he's like. So, before weddings, I rode BMX bikes, demolished buildings, walked out of 2 promising engineering careers, built bikes, didn't turn up for my London Fire Brigade assessment, filmed BMX bikes, put up ceilings, converted lofts, joined the parachute regiment, ran home, filmed more idiots on BMX bikes, MC'd at a couple of drum and bass nights, commentated at BMX competitions, built BMX jumps, filmed more BMX, turned 22 and landed in film post-production. Stuck there for 13 years, learning for the first time ever. Met Hannah, had kids, ghosted my 13-year film career one random Tuesday lunchtime with 6 weddings booked and Hannah egging me on. If you know Hannah, then I can imagine her doing that. And yesterday, I filmed my 200th or so wedding and rode my BMX between venues. Feels so weird writing that down. I've always felt like I just made a series of ill-informed, shitty choices and bailouts. But actually, it was me weaving through a load of shit to just find what I do now.
Boom.
Poetic.
If you say so yourself. But yeah, I read it and I found it I found it brilliantly amusing, but I also found it kind of moving as well. I really enjoyed reading that journey, and it almost felt like it was a bit of a therapy session for you.
It completely was, because I've never written it all down. I've never put it in a list like that, and it's all over the place. And as I was writing down each element of it, like up until like probably last year, I would sit and think, why didn't I go to that London Fire Brigade assessment? Why didn't? Because it was like so hard to get to that stage, but I didn't. Why didn't I go to the engineering apprenticeship that I got offered by London Underground? I was like, what? I don't know. And there would be genuine regrets. There'd be genuine thoughts where I'd like mess that up. Like even with weddings doing well and business being successful, I was always questioning the choices I made then. But writing it all out, the madness of it kind of altogether equaled something that was logical and an actual route. And each element gave me something different. Like joining the army gave me more confidence in myself. Totally. Like, and then that carried through, and then it just built on it from there. So it's a load of rubbish, but it's greater than the sum of its parts when you look at it, when you step back from it, kind of thing. So
I wouldn't say it's a load of rubbish. It's
some of it is really bad.
But literally reading it, I was like, this could be a book. This could be a book in its totality, really, because it's so many people's journey, isn't it?
Oh, it's so relatable.
It's literally, you go here and you know when you see those sort of like creatives diagrams where you start in one line and then massive squiggles in between, and then the end point is whatever your business is today. All those squiggles, there's a story there.
It spits you out, doesn't it?
It's incredible, though.
I think it just goes to show that you've always actually wanted more. Like you may not have been so aware of it at the time, but you obviously
completely unaware of it.
You obviously weren't satisfied in those roles, but actually what you have been able to do is to kind of take out just like little bits from each role, and I suppose this is part of maybe getting a little bit older, and obviously we're all of an age now with late 30s, early 40s, I think.
Wise.
you know, and that is part of the journey of growing up and realizing that maybe those experiences weren't just what we thought they were at the time, which was to just earn a living.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
and that actually you took things away from each one of those experiences, and that's kind of made you or put you in the position you're in today.
Yeah,
Because
completely.
without some of those experiences, you probably wouldn't be the videographer that you are now, and you might not go on. And you know, your journey hasn't ended at being this. Like, you haven't finished at just being a wedding photographer. You know, you talk about the end of the line.
Yeah, it's
Mike,
true. It's true.
This guy's
Yeah,
just,
you have,
this guy
you
for
have
me is
little,
just
you have
starting.
little
Yeah.
holding pens that you might settle in for a little while, but then, you know, obviously there's a restlessness there, or a dissatisfaction with stagnating, that just means, I guess it's different for different people. Some people have a clear goal and they aim for it, but other people go, which is what I used to do. Sort of, I suppose, to a degree, throw my toys out the pram, get frustrated, walk away, and then just think, right, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And often there'd be like a stopgap that filled it, but even then, that would be something that you can take something away from. In hindsight,
Yeah.
if I'd have known that then, I'd have been probably on a much more sort of stress-free journey and enjoyed the ride a bit more. But because I didn't know that, I just kind of kept thinking I was going down dead
So
ends.
now you do know that. How do you think that affects your mindset towards the position you're currently in?
I think it makes me feel grounded in what I'm doing and more assured in what I'm doing and less fearful in what there is to come, even though I don't necessarily know what it is. I think with that kind of track record all over the place like it is, you could, you know, best laid plans could be planned out 5 years in ahead, but I don't really need that now.
Yeah.
I feel like things that will happen. I mean, you can call it fate, you can go woo-woo with it and stuff like that, but it's definitely given me the ability not to be scared of what the future holds for me now. And I think weddings have compounded that in just the nature of being self-employed and the nature of chasing that work for yourself, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. But yeah,
And especially for video as well. And you know, we all know, don't we, that video tends to be one of the latter decisions in a couple's
grandparent money.
Yeah. So for you to, like, obviously me and Igor, we tend to be able to forecast and plan our year probably much more in advance.
Yeah.
And you obviously have to be a bit more reactive, a bit more fluid with how you take work on and when you take work on.
I think, yeah, and I guess we kind of tend to scramble a little bit more, videographers, and where like just the last 2 weeks, the amount of like last minute inquiries that have come in for this year. Now this year's quite stable and good for me, but previous years I would have just been grabbing jobs left, right, and centre, you know, and not even questioning it. So yeah, it's a bit more erratic, I'd say, and I sort of approach it with the mindset that I just need to kind of jump on them jobs with a plan to maybe reduce in that as I go on through it. But it has reduced loads since when I first started. You're just grabbing everything and anything. I was filming in coffee shops and doing any commercial work I could do at the same time. But now I'm like, no, I can do this with weddings. I know I can. Just be patient.
I mean, I think we're going to get. Sorry to jump in. I think we're going to get into this a little bit later on in terms of, you know, breaking into the world of video. But you just made a point there that I was like, we just need to talk about that very quickly. It's like the importance of being in an early stage of your business and just you've got to just shoot everything, haven't you? And I think this applies to photographers as well. 100%. Is that you've got to just say yes to everything, and then as time moves on and you start to kind of get that traction, the skill and the art becomes about saying no to certain.
And you find your voice within that massive
of course you
work.
do. It's an enormous learning curve.
And it's a cliche to say it, but you just have to shoot everything.
Yeah,
shoot everything and anything. Shoot your family at home. Do stupid things. Try out things.
Yeah.
Laugh at how bad they are.
It's one of those. I get asked that quite a lot in my course. It's like, how do I get more bookings? How do I get started? Like you've just got to get out there and just push yourself and
think that
shout about yourself.
The modern world, though, like especially social media, delivers a lifestyle, and people want to click into that lifestyle without realizing that no, there's a basis that's built into that.
Yeah, most of the times people just see the end point, really, the final result. That it's very polished, shiny, and shimmery, and the hard work that it's gone. It's literally 10 years worth of work or 15 years worth of work that you kind of like just seeing there being presented to you. And
it's big. It is bigger than you even give it credit for. Like, your basis of knowledge and learning is massive, and it starts when you're really young. So yeah, it's huge.
Before we dive into like sort of talking about the industry and weddings and where you're at, I'm really keen to just kind of pick up on a couple of things that came up in this. What do you want to call it? What do you call it with somebody's kind of
Dolan's synopsis?
Dolan's biography by himself.
Obviously, BMX has played a massive part, because you mentioned it about 54 times within that paragraph. But also the world of film production, I'm intrigued. So let's just address the BMX world first. How has that kind of featured in your background?
It basically was from the age of 12, probably up until just before I met Hannah in 2010. It was all I did. It was the only people I knew. Literally, I didn't go to a pub with my friends from school because I was digging holes with my BMX friends on a Friday night, on a Saturday night. Like, I had a strange childhood by my own choosing. And it was just, I think it was like a real sort of little misfit crew. Where we grew up in like northwest London, it wasn't a nice place to grow up. It was, there was like 2 or 3 routes you could choose to go down, and 2 out of the 3 were bad. And then we just found this little niche where we could get on with do our own thing, to the point of where we build the jumps, like, we would know the local crackheads and they would come and sit down and chill with us. But we found this thing where we could kind of get away from everyone, and it was just like-minded people, which on the face of it just looked like misfits. Like, we really did. And if we ever get together, well, you probably saw a group of them at my wedding.
Yeah, I would have done, yeah.
It's an odd group of people. The age range is broad, and the broken physicality due to riding bikes is quite apparent on a lot of them as well. But yeah, so it just, and then as I kept doing it, I started getting involved with events and things, and then I started filming things. In probably sort of 1998, we was documenting what we was doing, which included dragging sofas behind transit vans around the estate on fire with people on them. Like, it was that bizarre, but that was like week in, week out. And so filming that became like, I became the guy that documented it, because I was never the guy that could do all the riding. I'd try a bit, usually bust some teeth, which I still have a chipped tooth from. That's my little trophy. I'm keeping that forever. So filming came from BMX, essentially.
And had you always been creative? Had you always sort of like had that streak, or did that come quite naturally?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of school, before that, even like art and design, technology were kind of the only things I was interested in at school, to the massive detriment of every other subject. Like, it was just about that. I didn't care about anything else. Like, and that was another one of my sort of regrets looking back. Why didn't I try and learn more? But I was like between the ages of 11 and 16. I wasn't interested in trying to learn. I just wanted to do what I was enjoying, which was art for the most part, and a bit of welding and stuff like that.
I think we can all relate to that, can't we? I think we both talked about that, how we were drawn to those subjects at school. And when did working in film production when did that develop itself in your career?
That was a little while. So that was when I was 22. I got a job as a runner. Our next door neighbour, good family friend, she was a receptionist. She said, "There's a job going as a runner." I was like, "What's a runner?" Sounds like you get tired. So I just went into this building, and it was a company called Technicolor, who like you see at the end of all the films. And within about a week, I was like, "Whoa, this is really, really exciting." There was film vaults with 35mm and 70mm stacked to the ceiling, and there was like Monty Python in there, Ben-Hur, all these original, and it just completely like consumed me. I loved films anyway, but I didn't realise that I loved the kind of mechanics behind them until I got that job. So I just kind of dived into that and rode my BMX at the weekends.
Living the dream.
Yeah. Strange dream.
What was the sort of like film that you were the proudest of being part of?
Oh, that's probably more so than so I've worked on like big films. I did I was a small cog in a big machine.
Mm-hmm.
I was scanning film for a lot of my career, but I worked on like Harry Potter films, was a big part of so from film 2 all the way till the 8th film, we worked on all of them. But I think the proudest I was when we got a restoration project for Brief Encounter, the David Lean film, like classic black and white.
Yeah.
And a security guard like wheeled in 12 cans of film, and I hadn't looked at the job sheet, and it was the original camera negative for Brief Encounter.
Oh my goodness!
I was like,
this is gold.
And they delivered it in two batches. So like one guy brought in the first batch, and we put it in the vault, and then the second guy brought the second batch, and they have duplicates off site. So if he gets robbed,
gotta have your backup.
Gets run over. It's the backup.
The value of that.
But so that was like the restoration stuff. In a way, it was kind of more important, and that's where I really kind of got involved, and the sort of science came into it, and it was like it's just a privilege to work on it. Quite scary, like white gloves on.
Sheer responsibility of it.
Yeah, pressurized.
It sounds
room.
like you're in your element there, though. Like
I love it.
Sounds like the way
I
you talk about it, you are obviously incredibly passionate about.
I do miss that. I miss that kind of. Well, actually, saying that, I just realised. Like I was going to say, I missed the responsibility of that, but then I've taken on a different responsibility entirely.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Which carries as much weight.
Do you wear white gloves in your studio now?
I wear them to weddings, Sam. Have you not noticed?
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, so, and in every kind of thing I did, so that kind of glossed over the fact that I was doing like nights for a year and a half in Soho, working in a basement under a street in Soho. Like that was it, and it didn't matter.
So you were doing a job that you were clearly really passionate about and you enjoyed, that allowed you then to go and ride your bikes, which you were really passionate about and you enjoyed. What changed? I'm assuming Hannah came into your life at some point.
So, I mean, it was Teddy, our eldest.
Yeah.
That kind of just flipped everything, because that lifestyle doesn't fit with children. And there was a kind of brewing thing going on in the film industry. I don't want to be bitter about it, because I've been bitter about it for a long time and I just ain't anymore. I'm just like, no, I've seen my boss since. But there was opportunities. I always wanted to be an editor. That was my kind of goal from sort of year 3 from 25 years old. I wanted to be an editor. That's where I wanted to be. And I kind of put myself forward, stayed after work, stayed late, worked with the editors, learned this, done a bit of edit assisting to help the editors out. But I just never kind of fitted the mould. And I kind of felt that was brewing, because I got jobs as editors and then got pulled off of them jobs and put back where I was. I was good at what I did, and I knew I was, to the point of where the only pay rises I ever got was when I marched in the office and said, I need a pay rise because I'm better than XYZ, which looking back is pretty ballsy for a 25-year-old, a bit arrogant, but that's where I was, and it worked. So I was one of the highest paid kind of workers there, but I was doing the lower paid jobs, and I kind of boxed myself in because they wanted to drop my pay to put me on as an edit assistant. But then I had a baby and I was like, I can't afford to drop in pay. So I kind of got stuck. And my boss one day, he said, there's an opportunity for a management role. He actually said this. He said, but you probably need to consider your appearance and the way you speak.
Oh my days.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what it's like. It's brutal. It is cutthroat. It's like the finance industry. Like, it is cutthroat. They will just tell you to leave. Like, box on the table, go. Because, 1 millimeter wrong on something and you've ruined something. Like, so they broke the negative in the developing bath one night on a Tim Burton film, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The negative snapped. I think they lost 1,200 foot of film, which is like 10 minutes of Johnny Depp screen tests for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So they just pulled the job out of the company entirely. And that company, we lost it was probably like £150,000 worth of work just off the back of that. So kind of derailed from my point there.
No,
It's
no,
fine.
no,
It's
it's
good.
great.
It's a fascinating world to hear about.
Yeah, and it's just that it was cutthroat. It was brutal, and I just kind of got a bit disillusioned with it, and then the weddings kind of crept in then, and I felt like I had control of it. I felt like I controlled my own destiny, even though I had like 5 weddings booked and I'd shot a few.
How did you shoot your first wedding? Was it sort of like a friend of a friend, or?
It was so our friend Hannah's best friend used to have a wedding venue in Lichfield, and they just approached a couple that were like nice friendly couple, and they didn't have a video, and I shot the video, went and shot it for free, and it was all right. It was like terrifying as a process. It was 2014 I think, but it came out okay. I realised, and that just kind of reinforced, because I'd seen other videographers and I was like, I could do that, because I'd come from film.
Yep.
So I looked down on it, and I was bitter because I had to accept that I was going to be doing this, and it was rubbish.
Welcome to the dark side.
And I was like, oh, yes, of course I can do that, darling.
Yeah.
But then within a few weddings, I was like, no, this is nice. Like, this is nice. The responsibility's there, so you feel like you're in a position that's important.
I mean, you obviously had pressure in your role within the film production world. So
Yeah.
you obviously, and I do think like the pressure is a big side of our industry, isn't it? That you can either handle that or you can't.
Yeah.
I know plenty of great photographers that can't handle it and don't do weddings because of that pressure.
Yeah, I thrive in it.
Yeah, I love
it.
Yeah, it doesn't factor in my mind actually. The pressure.
No, not on the day. I think when you have a couple that are like sending you granular itineraries of every minute of the day, I start getting a bit like, whoa, just give me an outline. Like, I'll be there. I'll do what I need to do because I don't need extra pressure. There's enough there, but I've learnt to deal with it as a base level of when I'm at a wedding.
And you want space to breathe as well. You want space for the natural to happen, really, and just
I think experience teaches us that you can't force that, can you? Mm-hmm. And that actually you just need to be.
You can definitely be a facilitator of like
certain moments.
Well, I don't know what the word would be, like bringing an air of like changing the mood of the
You
day.
can influence it.
You can influence it.
Definitely influence it.
Yeah, you definitely can, and I think that's a skill you definitely learn. I started seeing when that would click and how you could kind of be like, just calm down.
Yeah.
That is irrelevant. Like, just calm down.
Yeah. Well, when you've been to 50 weddings, you kind of get a feel for how they work, don't you? So
you start directing.
Yeah.
Start directing. That's it.
You do, yeah. But directing natural stuff.
Exactly.
So that's the knack, I guess, isn't it?
So where's your business at now? How are you finding the wedding industry and Dan Dolan Films? Like, where's your?
It's good. It feels like I can control it. Like I can sort of turn it on when I need to turn it on, back it off when I need to back it off, and I'm not scared of the bookings coming in. We did quite a big sort of price increase after C word.
Yeah, we don't talk about it on this program anymore. We talked, Igor, you wanted to talk about it earlier, and I was like, no, mate, we are
bring the tone right down.
We are done. We are not going to discuss it anymore on this
Never more.
I've had enough.
But I think that event panicked a lot of us, but also gave a lot of us a sort of real sort of stress test for our businesses, for our mental health, which we're going to be decompressing from for a long while yet. I really believe that. But yeah, so this year it's nice. It feels nice. I've got the bookings I want. I'm just about to sort of close the door on 2022 and say no more, because I need to back it off from last year, because that felt like it was kind of creeping around burnout zone last year. Shooting as many weddings as I did, it just butted heads too much with trying to live a normal life with kids and stuff. So, but yeah, it feels good. I feel like I'm in control of it, which is nice. It's reassuring. We just switched to a limited company this year as well, to just give us, I think, being limited, while it doesn't necessarily matter really, I think it just felt like the next natural step, and my shady accountant was like, yeah, let's do that. So I took his advice.
I think having listened to kind of that background over what I've been talking for like 20 odd minutes or so, it's really nice. It must be nice for people that are maybe in those positions of jobs that don't really fulfill them, just to hear that you can make that jump, and that you can go after something and pursue it, and that there is another world out there that you can get, you know, a very satisfying career from, and being like you said control a few times, and I think that's the one thing that you get when you're self-employed and a creative, is that you get that control. You're in charge of those decisions, aren't you?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, you're completely kind of deciding what you do, but then obviously beyond that, there's a learning curve of deciding what you don't need to do, which is sometimes harder to let go than other things. But yeah, that's what I now strive towards, is to be able to sort of completely control it and just have it there as a thing, and then I can just focus completely on where I want to go next, wherever that is.
Do you look back on it now, and obviously we kind of addressed it at the start, like talking about your background and stuff, but do you look back on it now and kind of, do you feel like proud about what you've achieved?
Yeah, I mean, I love it it's always a good conversation starter, and it works really well at weddings because there's quite a broad pool of stuff to take from. But yeah, I do. I look back at it. I probably referenced the army far too much, considering I just ran away after like 10 months of training. Like, if I told a parachute regiment soldier that I was a soldier, he would probably knock me out in the street, because it was just not true. But like, it gave me something. I took something away from it. And yeah, I am proud of it now. And
you don't look down on weddings anymore?
No, because I found something more real in them than exists in the film industry. There's something more, film, like Harry Potter was a real creative process for J.K. Rowling and whoever was directing it, and the directors of photography. That was their creative process. But I'm like way down the list. I'm like just feeding off the scraps of their creativity. This is my creativity. So it's great. Just, you can't be like snobbing on it. It's more important.
Greater sense of fulfillment.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
And I guess, literally, as you said beforehand, with your boss and everything else, and then with Teddy coming in, do you think that fulfillment is that sort of like made you sort of like make the jump? Or
I think there was definitely a sort of hint of just shooting a few weddings that this was good, and this had potential. And I guess them three things all came to a head at the same point, like having a baby, the weddings being like, oh, this is quite good, and my old job being like, oh, this is quite shit. So it all came together at a point, and then that was that lunchtime when I was just like, later, walked to Paddington Station and went home. I went back to my dad's because that's where I lived. But yeah, so, and that was it.
I think this is a perfect time to start talking about Hannah.
Hannah. Yes.
Hannah. How did you
Hannah.
I mean, given the background that you've painted of your early years, I hope you're not offended, but I'm going to say you did well to get Hannah.
Oh, punching. Punching. Like, I know this. Like, yeah. Hi, I'm Dan. Yeah, that's my bike. Like, I know I don't drive yet. Yeah, completely. It was just and again, it's just like a little meandering circumstances, but all down to BMXing. BMXing friend's wife was friends with Hannah. And
she saw something in you, obviously, that...
Yeah, definitely wasn't money or potential, but I think I was wearing loads of gold jewellery when we first met as well. I don't know why. Like, I
would love to see those pictures.
What's that British rapper? I just had in my mind you just wearing all white gold chains. Guns don't kill people, rappers do.
Goldy looking chain.
Yeah.
That's the image that I just had.
It was probably worse than that. Like, I think I had a leather jacket on and loads of gold. I mean, all over the place. But
was that obviously I suppose we can kind of all relate to this. Like, I think when you meet a partner that you're going to be with for a while and you start a family, that's the start of the new chapter, isn't it? And
yeah, completely
the catalyst for growing, because you're not just in it for yourself anymore, are you?
Yeah, completely. And Hannah's really quite a different person to me. Like, we're probably more similar now after sort of 11 years, but she was very different. She went off to Australia when she was 18 and swam in lakes full of crocodiles. She didn't know this. She was just being silly. But I didn't do the whole travelling thing. I was, when riding my bike, as I said. So we were quite different in
Burning sofas.
Yeah, burning sofas. But so she kind of filled a gap in me where I probably wouldn't have been as bold in terms of business decisions. Like, I still ask her to this day, like, oh, should we do discount? They sound really nice. She's like, no. Like, so she still fills that gap where I have a little bit of a lack of confidence maybe, or where I just can't see things rationally because I'm too close to it or something like that. She kind of fills that gap. So yeah, she kind of not changed me, but kind of helped me develop in the way I needed to as well. So
do you guys have sort of like set roles within the business?
Yeah, so Hannah kind of, well, that's changed quite a bit actually, but so like I shot the first wedding I did on my own, and I realised that it was hard. So the second wedding, Hannah came and shot. And then for the first 4 or 5 years, I think Hannah shot pretty much every wedding. We shot them together. And that was really nice, having someone kind of going through it with you, learning together, you know, correcting each other. Because Hannah shoots a really different way to the way I shoot. I shoot from a kind of technical point of view, and Hannah just kind of shoots when she sees stuff that's nice. And that kind of complemented each other as well. It worked really well. And I think I learned a lot from Hannah's kind of approach and applied it to my own approach, and kind of calmed down a little bit about, like, you know, getting the settings just right because, oh shit, I've missed that. Like, whereas Hannah'd be like, oh, you got a good shot. Like, so yeah. And Hannah would always kind of carry the admin side of things, because I, for whatever reason, probably working in basements and digging holes, in terms of communicating with people through, like, on the phone and even through emails, it was like a brick wall for me. It was so hard. And I guess it was probably some sort of form of anxiety that I had. I couldn't speak on the phone. I couldn't see a person's face, and it would make me, like, anxious to know that I had to phone someone up. And Hannah would be like, she'd walk out into the office or whatever and say, oh, I've got Lucy on the phone asking about a wedding. And I'd be like, no. But then she'd kind of give me the phone. And over the years, I'd say it's only the last 2 years that I feel fully confident in speaking on the phone. The phone was the main.
I'll speak to you most days now.
And
Dan, I've got a video question for you. Like, Dan's my go-to video technician support guy, and
I think it's
to the point where I'm going to buy him some AirPods soon, because I talk to him that often. I'm like, you've got work to do. I know you're busy, but can you just?
Yeah, I think it's just visual. I think I need visual cues to speak to people, because I've never had an issue with speaking to people face to face. It's not, and Zoom calls have always been okay as well, which I know a lot of people don't like them, but I've kind of always preferred that. So yeah, Hannah took up the slack there, and she kind of worked previously in, like, admin roles anyway, so she kind of had a good basis to sort of organise all that side of things. She still does now. She still, like, does inquiries and stuff like that, but obviously having 3 kids now, it's just kind of, the roles have sort of shifted a little bit more. She shoots weddings still, but probably only the bigger weddings. So if we shoot an Indian wedding, we'll just need more people, so she'll shoot them. So she's shooting 5 weddings, I think, this year. Which that's hard, just having 3 kids, and, you know, dishing that out with grandparents is tricky. Yeah, 3 kids is just the dynamics.
That work-life balance in our industry is tough, isn't it? I think we all kind of go.
I think
I know how that feels.
And the balance, I don't really believe the balance exists. I believe there's compromising state. The balance implies that both sides are weighted equally, which just never happens.
Yeah, definitely.
You're focused on this, or you're focused on this. So it's not a balance. It's more of a sort of a juggle and a, you know, temporary distribution of interest or something like that. So, and that, like, still for me is all over the place. Like, the hours I'm doing at the moment, finishing edits and things, is just, I do, like, the school run in the morning. Sometimes I do breakfast in the morning. Hannah does a school run. Then sometimes I do dinner if we've got gymnastics or ballet or swimming or, you know, and it's just a massive juggle. And so you just kind of fit it in where it fits in. And
I think it takes flexibility on all parties, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, to
that's one of the bonuses we
just
have,
flex.
is flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it is nice to have that flexibility.
Something that I've started to really appreciate this year, where we just started having 2 girls now, it's just the privilege and ability that we have as self-employed people and creatives in general. They're literally, yeah, it's okay, I can start work at 10 o'clock today because I've dropped Ava off, went to the gym. By the time I get home and actually sit at my desk and start doing everything, do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's that freedom that we have, and yeah, hold those moments, treasure those moments, that flexibility.
Yeah, it is like you say, it's a privilege, like, and it's good to sort of recognize that more often than you think. And I like consciously go, no, look at the dads outside the school gates in their suits, literally chucking their children and then getting in their Audis and bombing off to the office. That is a horrible situation to be in. Oh, look, we get a bit judgy because we're at all the sports days and all that. We're like, oh, they're not here, probably in the office. And it's like, you don't realise how lucky you are. And I've even had conversations with Ted. He's like, oh, what are you doing? Why have you got weddings on Saturday and Sunday? And I'm like, yeah, it's rubbish. I was like, but look, how would it be if I didn't see you in the morning because I'd gone to work, and all I did was maybe read you a story before you went to bed at night? And he was like, yeah, that's rubbish. I was like, yeah, so, you know, learn, son, come on. Yeah. But yeah, it is. And I think acknowledging that is great, because then you're like, yeah, this is all right. This is nice. I walk into my house for my lunch. It's 6 steps from my shed.
Yeah. It's hard to put kind of a monetary value on that lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd find it hard to go and sit in an air conditioned. I mean, I'd like an air conditioned office today. We came in today, didn't we? And it was like, oh, it's
especially
a bit
with them cannons.
Get those fans on. But yeah, to like you painting that picture of leaving the house before breakfast and coming home for, if you're lucky, story time. It
makes me feel a bit sick.
Yeah,
like, it gives me a feeling of like, I don't. And that's what I grew up with. That's what
you just miss so much. You'd miss so much. It's those ordinary little moments that you get, aren't they? That I think we all feel very fortunate to be in that position. So on Hannah, I mean, obviously you've talked about how she works. If she was sat here, would she say that you've kind of contributed to her improvement as well and development? Is that something that does it go kind of both ways?
I've definitely taught her some technical aspects, but I think she genuinely likes to distance herself from them. I think she likes to just be that spontaneous. So you've seen Hannah in bridal prep. She's chatting, making cups of tea, and just like, oh, get a shot of that. And it's like, it's such a sort of embedded way of shooting.
She's in it.
Yeah. And it's amazing to watch. It's not how I do it. And I think she has kind of taken on board some of the more technical aspects to a degree, but I think she just does her own thing. And funny. She gets some amazing shots. She really does.
You do make a great team. Like, there's definitely a really good complement there between the both of you and how you work.
And it's an honest partner, isn't it? Like, so if I'm editing, she will like go in hard on an edit from 2 angles. From an angle of being like, that's what you're doing there, that's bad. Sometimes I can explain my way around it and validate it, and then other times she'll be like, oh, that I think that angle might not be the best angle, and I'm like, yeah, I was kind of thinking that. So you've got like a reassurance on certain things, and then someone to criticise you on the other.
A personal critiquer.
And it's good. It is good, and it's made me so thick-skinned. And I always say that to couples. I'm like, look, if you're not happy, tell me. Like, I'm not going to weep in the corner, like, because you've questioned my creative intent. It's fine. Like, hopefully the process of getting to that wedding has vetted the people enough and our relationship that we do come to a similar point in aesthetic and what we're expecting. But if we don't, let's talk about it, and I can change it.
Have you ever
It's
had
called
that?
editing. What's that?
Have you ever had that?
I've had a couple of instances where people have just kind of. It's happened with music once or twice. So my music choice, and then a couple of times it's been a case of like, oh, I end up like pointing people in the direction of art list and saying, well, here's a catalogue. There's 20,000 songs on it. Like, have a look. See how hard it is to work out how to find music.
We both sort of dabbled in video, haven't we, over the last year or so with the way our businesses are going, and I think we're both of agreement that the possibilities of video and production and editing are
ridiculous.
I don't even
Just
think
so
the word
huge.
endless kind of does it.
Yeah,
You could give a wedding film to 1,000 videographers that would edit it in a totally different tone and mood and start and I don't think as photographers we have that scope for
creativity.
It's such an interesting like conversation on kind of how deep the creativity goes within the different mediums. And I've thought about this loads because I look to photography probably more than I do videography within weddings. I look to filmmaking as a wider thing, as a sort of source of inspiration, but within weddings I kind of look to photography more, and because I think what it is with photography, so there's a sort of rule of thumb that you can edit a good film out of a shit footage.
right.
You can edit a good film out of shit footage. You can't edit a good photo out of a shit photo. Like, so in terms of like nailing what you need to nail there and then, that's why photography for me kind of encapsulates their moments better. Video, we've got a few more tools to play with. We can pull some emotional strings with audio and the edit. So they're kind of not really comparable, I don't think. It's just a fact they're images.
It's even when you deliver, or when couples receive their wedding their wedding photos and their wedding video, I always encourage them, even beforehand, yes, if you get a chance to have a videographer, because the perspective is just going to be completely different from what I'm going to give you. Yes, what I'm going to give you is something great and you're going to love it, but his perspective is going to be just completely different, and it's going to make you feel different as well. It's going to bring a different tone, really. So that's what I like about it. But at the same time, with the whole idea of photo or video having a different spectrum, I still think that sometimes as photographers we can be a bit lazy. We can be a bit just in the way we present our work in some ways. I'm 100% sure that there's different ways of us presenting our work in a way that's quite creative and just different and quite what's the word? I don't know. A bit more pushing the boundaries a little bit. I think we've put blinders on a little bit, and just presented photos on a slideshow sort of thing, or even on a book, and that's it.
Yeah, it's that. I think it comes from that struggle of. Dan touched on it very briefly about talking about, kind of nailing your style a little bit. You kind of. I didn't know it. I can't remember exactly what you said, but obviously we're trying to appeal to a client, and we want them to be invested in us as an artist and as a creator. And when what we don't want to do is confuse our clients as to what they're going to get. Mm-hmm. So I suppose that kind of is probably why we get to a stage, don't we, where we go through that steep learning curve where we try everything, and then we start to hone in on what it is that we're about as photographers and videographers, because when we do that, we attract the people that want that niche or that particular style.
And you keep producing that more and more.
I think the point I'm trying to make with video is that there are even more, I don't know if is niche the right word, like so many more variants or slightly different styles of video than there are photography. Like I think photography is still broad. There's a huge amount of scope for, creative interpretation on a wedding day. But when you factor in audio, sound, music production, storytelling, the possibilities for video are ultimately infinite.
It
just goes on and on and on.
That's it.
I think what you've done really well, just to finish that point, is like what you've done really well as a business and a brand over the last sort of 2 or 3 years is to really lean into, this is what Dan Dolan Films is about. This is our work, and that means that you don't get those clients now that come to you, but this isn't what we wanted, because actually what you've shown time and time again is this is our work, we're consistent with it. You know,
Yeah.
you're buying into this philosophy that you're going to trust us to come and do a job, and we're going to portray it in this tone and this
Yeah.
way.
And we'll do what we need to achieve that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, and
Love that.
and finding out, like finding your voice or your aesthetic or whatever you want to call it, is, it does take a while.
Yeah, because I think that's what it always comes down to with clients when they're looking to find somebody is, and I don't even think they always know it, but it's about trust.
Yeah.
And actually, I had a Zoom call with a couple last night who said what stood out about your work was that it's consistent over and over again. Whereas they'll see other people and they'll see like nice little shots here and there, but they might look in a full gallery and it doesn't quite back up that one or two images they've seen. Whereas obviously, you know, me and you, 10 years into our business, we're both very consistent with what we work and with what we produce. And you know, I can go to a wedding and it might not go to plan the day visually, but I can still make it
exactly
portray it in the way that I want to portray it. And
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the same for video. It's just like you say. I think we've got a few more tools to sort of shoehorn it into our.
How long did it take to kind of for you to feel like you'd found your is style the right word? You know, to find your, you know, what it is you're about. Or did you find that was that very clear early on?
No, I don't think it was, and I think looking elsewhere can sometimes hinder your progress at actually finding what you're about. I don't think I could probably look back through, say, my Instagram feed and visually go, oh yeah, this is where something
was the
clicked.
point.
But then, is it when your visual aesthetic lands where you want it, or is it where the overall mood and tone of the film, including the audio, lands where you want it? So and people take so many different things away from films. Like some people are so visually driven that that's what kind of gets them, and other people, it's not visually driven. It's just about the audio, or it's about just the fact that it's so strange. And we've seen that at weddings, like moments that are not necessarily anything that amazing and no one's really paying attention, but when you film it in the right light, in the right angles, put it to the right music, it just becomes something that's more than it ever was.
Yeah, I think with video, I think you do get, you know, you kind of mentioned it earlier, Igor, about a video is going to give you something different. It's always like I always get the feeling of atmosphere more with video.
Yeah, 100%. It just brings a mood.
That's down to audio, I think.
Yeah.
I think audio is what drives the atmosphere.
Whenever I recommend videographers, or if couples come to me saying, "Oh, can you recommend somebody?" Whether I send them your way or some other people's way, it's always about, you know, when you're looking for a videographer, make sure they're doing the audio properly, because that is what elevates the video from just being just a motion picture to something that's got an atmosphere and something that really hooks you.
Yeah, well, you feel audio. Like that's not just being spiritualist. You feel it. You physically vibrates you. So there's no science that can explain that, but it's got to be doing something beyond. And
we've talked about it on previous podcast when we had Ben sat here the other week and talking about. So Ben said something and it made both of us go, "Oh, I've got goosebumps listening to that."
Yeah,
you know, because we heard something that made it moved us the way he described something. So
it's got a mood.
It's all about the mood.
Yeah,
that's what I say to couples. I say, like, if you want something specific from a film, think about the mood of it rather than I like this, and this, and this. Think about the mood that you want your film to have.
I just thought, are you missing a marketing trick actually by not describing yourself as a Harry Potter runner? I've just thought of it. How have we not noticed that?
Could be.
It's not on your website. You know,
it was for a while, but then I even had a link to my IMDb page at one point. I was like, no. Yeah, I'm not very good at sort of shouting about myself. I've always been like,
It just establish authority.
Yeah.
Even if it's in a humorous way, whichever way you feel about it today.
Yeah. That's it.
Quick random question: what's kind of like top 3 movies?
Oh, this is another weird. This is another weird parallel. Another weird parallel I have with you guys is that when you was going through your top films, I was like, that. Interstellar.
Yes, yes.
Oh, saw it.
I have seen it now, so it is great.
I saw it on Sunday on a 70mm print in the West End with Hannah, and it was full of scratches and grain and dirt. Even a 70mm, it shouldn't be. It should be nice and clean. But it was obviously an old print, and it was an old cinema, so there was heads everywhere. But it all just disappears when you're engaged in them scenes. And I don't know. I don't know whether it's like, I'd love to have seen Interstellar before I had kids, because I think it's a different film.
It's a completely different film.
Because that was the pitch. Christopher Nolan went to Hans Zimmer, and he didn't tell him it was a sci-fi epic. He said, I'm making a film about the relationship between a father and a son. I mean, he gender flipped it at the end, but that's all he told Hans Zimmer. So he based the whole like theme of the soundtrack on the relationship between a father and a child. And that it's like, don't know how it all works, but it all slots into. I know you can pick it apart with the science and that, but so what? Don't care. Interstellar's definitely there. I did write a list of films. Pan's Labyrinth is an absolutely amazing film. Like, I really want the kids to see it, but it's
I'm exactly the same.
It's savage.
They have to grow up quite a bit.
I think it'll be early teen years for me.
But then I like I like Quentin Tarantino's films. I love the dialogue, like they're driven by dialogue. And again, everyone kind of bins him for being a recycler of, so what? He's doing it for our generation.
So he does it so well as well.
So I love, like, Django is amazing.
I love his timing.
Yeah, his pacing's great. He just leaves you hanging and then stoves someone's face in with a hammer. Like, it's like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay.
That is just it's the essence of a slow burner, isn't it? Really, you're like, what's going on here? Whoa, like, but it changes. Like, Gladiator will still be such an amazing film for me because I had that whole cinema experience when I was little. Saving Private Ryan, the same.
That was a blockbuster. Wasn't it?
That's the last real epic. Was like the last physical.
I can remember the buzz when that came out.
Yeah,
just being like, nobody had seen anything quite like it, had they?
But he's like, if you look at Ridley Scott and what he's done, like he's like a visionary film director in that he controls everything. Like, his DOPs are playing second fiddle, and I met one of them, and he wasn't very nice either. So I always sing Ridley Scott's praises. But I could literally, I love 12 Monkeys. I think that's a great film.
So good.
Like, the aesthetic in any sort of Terry Gilliam, Roger Pratt is the DOP. If you watch 12 Monkeys or Brazil, like, the aesthetic, he uses like fisheye lenses and stuff like that, and it shouldn't make sense, but it's amazing.
I mean, we've talked about this in a previous episode. Like, how does the inspiration that you take from those films, how does it transfer itself? How does it what's the word for it? Manifest itself in your work as a wedding photographer? Because a lot of people would go, well, Gladiator, that's not a wedding.
Yeah, but
12 Monkeys, that's not a
like
wedding.
You said, it comes down. It's pacing. I think pacing's a big thing. Tone. Probably not even to a degree the technical aspects of shooting. Like,
do you get people walking through long grass and like brushing the grass as they walk?
I've fully got that shot with that scene. Like, I've literally got like the music in my brain as it's like, and so that's obviously direct sort of. Well, it's just copying. Let's be honest. But I don't know. I think just your collective creative base that you consume just like propagates into what you do. It's not one specific thing. Like, I don't know, just watching the way Roger Deakins, the DOP, like amazing DOP, does all the Coen brothers films. Like, his framing and stuff is just so thought out, and you don't chop feet off.
Like, chop feet
Deakins
off.
is like an absolute master of where to cut things. Don't cut anything on a joint. It just feels awkward. Cut it mid-arm. Like, just things like that. And you might see a YouTube video about that, or you might watch a Coen Brothers film or something like that and be like, yeah, it's just...
But once you've seen stuff like that, you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it.
And it ruins film experience.
Then it does become part of your work, because you're going to a wedding, and you're kind of... It's there. It's like ingrained in you.
Yeah, and I guess that's what makes the cinematic, which is the buzzword in the industry, whatever it means. Don't know. But yeah, it's so I don't think that you can necessarily look at something and see specific aspects that you take away. I think it just all accumulates as like a collective inspiration ball in your head. Is a term.
There you go.
Inspiration ball.
Right, so that's most of the kind of the fun side of the job covered, right? Going to weddings, being inspired creatively. What about the not so glamorous stuff? What about the business side of your business? How do you reflect on that side of what you do as being self-employed and handling the business, the finances, the admin? You kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of emails, but I'm thinking much more in terms of like the day-to-day running of a business.
So the business side of it has always been where I've kind of found it hardest to sort of streamline it, to make it work efficiently and to make it just easier. Like I was using Excel spreadsheets for a long time, and I had like 5 different ones that were all different things, and it was only like 2 years ago that I got onto like a CRM. See, I'm still learning what that actually is, and that changed a lot for me. But I've got an issue with wanting to know the underlying mechanics for anything I use. So
that's exactly why I love you.
I want to know, like, so when we started the business, I kind of spoke to an accountant, and I was like, oh, yeah, he's all right. I need him there, but I'm going to nail this. I'm going to read just British tax legislation, and I'll nail it. And I just did not get it. Like I'm pretty competent at maths and things, but it just blew my mind. Like I couldn't wrap my head around it, and it frustrated me so much. And I've kind of got on with it over the years. I've always had an accountant, because filling in a tax return for myself it's just not an option. I just couldn't attempt to do that because what's that mean?
It's high risk.
Yeah,
I always think it's very dangerous.
Get them auditors in,
and it's an expensive mistake too.
Yeah. When it's not your field of expertise, it is very easy to put a decimal point in the wrong place.
Yeah,
or to,
that's it. And and I guess there was a pressure there, because I was like moving into my own business, and I was going to be self-employed and doing my own thing. And there was a pressure there to be like, what you see as successful self-employed people running businesses, they do it all. Spinning plates left, right, and centre. So I guess for a while I got frustrated, because I was like, I can't get my head around that. I can't creatively and actively be doing something there whilst I've got to try and understand that there. And I think that was another part of learning within business, is that you don't necessarily have to be good at all aspects of it. You can palm off some aspects, or do you know what? Even for the first couple of years, do them in a bit of a scrappy way. Like, if I look back at my books that I gave the accountant in the first few years, it is an absolute mess. It just was like a screwed up ball of receipts. And he was like, oh, you just send me a cash book. And I was like, what is that? Yeah. What is a cash book? Like, so that's been a learning curve for me. And last meeting I had with the accountant, where we was gonna move the business into a limited company, I was like, I just need to say, I'm more than happy to pay you more money if you just take this away from me. I don't need it. I just want to know that it's being done correctly, and you can do that.
Yeah.
You have a degree that says you can do that. I thought for 6 years that I could read and qualify myself to his level. No, you can't. You can't do that. So that was a big kind of part for me to sort of, I guess it's letting go of it, but just accepting that, like, different people have different skills and let them run with it. So that's much better now. I don't have to think about it. There's loads of metrics that I'm still getting my head around to sort of understand your business, which is that for me now is something I'm trying to get better at understanding. Like, have a look at like conversion rates and things like that, and try and implement some tools to help me with that. But that's still definitely somewhere I'm kind of learning and developing now that I guess the creative side is established and doing what it needs to do and feels fulfilling. I can now kind of build up the other parts and make them work better.
Yeah, because people aren't booking you as a videographer to run your accounts. They're booking you because they love your work and they want you to produce their videos. And we all know that video is incredibly time consuming post-production wise. Genuinely, it is far more consuming than photos.
Massive respect.
So you as a business, you have to be leaner and more efficient than I think we do as photographers to be able to kind of generate that turnover. So just to be able to recognise that you can't do that, and just to be able to kind of go, no, do you know what? I understand a bit of it, but actually I need to outsource that. Yeah, I think is a really big lesson that I think more people need to kind of take on board.
Yeah, and I think you got the whole kind of entrepreneurial sort of mindset that's pumped into your screens. Doesn't allow for that. Doesn't allow for sort of, I don't get that. What the hell's a dividend? I don't understand that. It doesn't allow that. You need to be like one of the dragons in Dragon's Den and be like working out margins. I have to Google what net and gross mean most of the time because it really confused me which one's which. And I'm fine. I'm happy to admit that now because I don't need to know that because the accountant can do it.
I thought it was just me that did that.
Yeah, every time net gross. I think there's a fishing analogy that can help you with it, but I forgot the analogy. So just knowing when to let go of things.
Yeah. Are there any other parts of your business that you think you could outsource?
I could potentially outsource some editing parts of because I don't do a cull as such with my edits. I like to have a kind of a big pool of footage, and sometimes I'll use footage that most people would cull out anyway, like some shaky, blurry bit of rubbish could work well for a transition or something like that. So, but there's definitely a side of it which is I guess in the film industry it's called a digital imaging technician. So it's basically someone that manages the media, organises the media, labels it, backs it up, archives it.
I've certainly learned that lesson over the last year or so.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good role. It's a job in itself. We had 8 data wranglers, they're called, in where I used to work, and they just literally sit in front of dual screen computers, one HP Windows machine, one Mac, terminal windows open on all of them, just moving data, managing data, and that's what has to happen because I think we had 4.5 petabytes of storage. So it was you mess that up, it gets messed up in a mad, a crazy way. So that could definitely be something that could outsource. That sort of, I guess it's a digital imaging technician or assistant editor role would be that. Would
create a good catalogue of a good library.
Yeah,
basically.
And that's data management is kind of underpins everything you do because good archival doesn't exist unless good data management exists. It just can't, because if you duplicate a file name, you archive that, it overwrites or it merges or it does something funky, it's kind of critical. Otherwise, the business just falls apart.
I think it was one of the first things you told me when I was getting to video was to make sure that you set your folders up properly.
Yeah.
And just to label things and to just to have a folder for each project and to know where all the files sit.
Yeah, it just make it rigid. I've got a little script I use in Terminal, and that builds a project. So you just type in the name of the abbreviation of the couple, and then it builds a file structure that's the same as every single file structure for every single project I do. And then each file out the camera is individually named with a prefix of the project, which what that allows you to do is to search any file from any location on a computer because you know what that file's called.
And this is why Dan's going to be doing a video course with me.
Boom, boom, boom.
So it'll be a big old chunky section on data management.
So
yeah, it's that's definitely an outsourceable part of the process. A lot of trust goes in that though. A lot of trust. But then you can implement procedures that make it procedural rather than faith-based. Say that he's all right, I've trained him how to do it. Well, no, if he's done X, Y, Z and given you a report, so you have what's called a camera report or a mag report, which just reports on what you shot. So when I shoot, I always take a note of how many clips I've shot. And then when you do the transfer, if you've got any corrupted clips because you see a discrepancy in a number. Yeah. Then when that copy goes through, and just so you make it bulletproof. And that should be the strongest part of any...
As bulletproof as it can be.
As bulletproof as it can be.
Yeah.
Literal, bulletproof, fireproof. Just separate your data. Just get as far away from each other as you can.
And I suppose we're kind of getting into the world of managing video files, like for anybody that's listening to this that is like has got a bit of a passion for videography, like how would you kind of, if they were sat in front of you, like what would you kind of give them that would be like, right, this is how you need to approach breaking into the industry?
So specifically for weddings, but actually it probably applies across the board. I mean, film as an industry in terms of TV and video is it's one of the trickiest industries to get involved in, and you've got to be prepared to sort of sell your soul a little bit and like just get your head down and work for a good few years. But video is so massive now that it kind of circumnavigates the film industry. Is like a bubble in the middle that like nepotism exists in, and like 4 generations of sons work in it, and that's fine. But you can do so much more. And well, I think we mentioned it earlier, but the crux of it is just shooting stuff. Shoot anything. Like write a stupid 1-paragraph story and see if you can shoot it. See if you can use the camera to tell the story. So take the words and then use the camera to tell the story. Work out what works, work out what doesn't. Just do that. And in that process, you'll find out if you really love it. If nothing clicks and you don't look at a shot or an edit and go, oh, that works, I've made that.
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, then maybe you're not right for it. And I think any creative that has a good idea of what they want to do, practicing it at any level, in any setting, you should be able to get the same satisfaction from. So I remember years ago, when Teddy was a baby, I edited a little sequence of him crawling around the house. It was nothing. It was like 8 shots, but I really planned it out. I like timelined it. I like storyboarded it, and I was like, I'm going to make this little edit, just a little, and it was great. I loved it, and it was that. If you can find the excitement and the enjoyment in something like that, then you do it and you earn money for it. It's like, there you go. So, and in terms of stepping into the industry, you've got to go in humble. You've got to just talk to people, and you've got to build relationships, because the relationships you build with other suppliers as a videographer are kind of paramount. If you rock up with a shoulder-mounted Sony Betacam camera and act like a dick, you're not getting recommended to anyone by anyone. So you kind of be humble. Just be like, I'm new. What can I learn from these people around me? I remember the first ever Indian wedding I shot. It was so terrifying. And there was 4 photographers there with 1DX Mark IIs, like literally, like they was the most helpful, friendly people. And they just kind of took me and Hannah under their wing, their collective wings, and helped us through it. So, and that I'd been shooting weddings for a couple of years by then, but just kind of know your place and know where you need to step back and get some help, ask for help, or understand that there's better people there that are better placed to guide you through it. And if you do that, money-wise, yeah, you're probably going to have to compromise on what you're expecting money-wise at the start. That's just the inevitable,
That's
steps
part of the process,
you take. It's
isn't
part
it?
of the process. I can't really remember what I charged on my second or third weddings. I think it was about £800. First one was completely free. I'm not saying you have to do that. Like, of course, like if you can, but we had friends. So yeah, we had friends that had a wedding venue. So that made it a bit easier for us. But just approach everyone and just be interested and humble. Or like, we live in a world now that is so open and kind of community driven within social media that it's kind of impossible, like, to not find a group or find a network. I struggled with that because I didn't feel very comfortable in kind of putting myself in and going, hello, I'm new. So I was probably quite closed off, and maybe that slowed me down a little bit in terms of, but then that's probably goes back to the little bit of arrogance in coming from the film industry. So yeah, just be humble, just be willing to learn. Don't it's kind of that simple.
Yeah, I think that networking point is massive. I think
Yeah.
so many people overlook it or think that it's almost too obvious to be a valid point. But actually, from a photographer's point of view, you know, you actually, if we look at like and I'm sure Igor's the same with you guys as well, in terms of like recommending you, like you bring value to our couples, that means that we provide a better service because they're buzzing that we've recommended somebody that they actually like and go, oh yeah, we really like this guy and we would never have found him.
And that, yeah.
So like you allow us to provide an improved level of service because we're going, hey guys, right, I know you've asked about video, like, have you looked at this guy? Have you looked at this guy? Because, or this girl, you know, have you looked at this team? Because the market is so vast that actually to have a personal recommendation from a supplier they've chosen already is just invaluable to them.
It is. And I think it's just more credible from the word go, because stepping into the wedding industry,
it could be a minefield.
Like, no one's ever done it. Like, maybe people have once before or something, but most people have no clue. Like, when we got married in 2019, we had no clue, and we'd worked in the industry for 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. But I think, like, what you said there is true, and everyone's kind of always about, like, oh, your reputation precedes you. But I think with weddings, the trailing reputation probably carries as much importance, like, and can help you sort of propagate through the couples you want. Because if you leave sort of, you've been good on the day, you leave a sort of good taste in their mouth, to put it, and then you deliver them the goods, you know, you've kind of left a package there that they can all see. So the amount of inquiries you get off the back of weddings should be quite high, because you should have left that imprint of yourself. And that's so like a trailing reputation. That's what I've just labelled it as. I think.
Yeah, great point.
So I think that's important. Like, and that comes from the relationships with other suppliers, which that for me has always been the fundamental thing. Like the relationships with other suppliers,
and like kind of you're never thinking you're above your station.
Nah.
You know, you're a wedding photographer and videographer, and I'll often say to people, like, you never know who's in the room. You never know. I've
experienced that.
You never know.
I've got the one story. It's pretty brutal. It was one of these, you know, red coat master of ceremonies, old school guys that just shout at everyone. Yeah. We sat down for like food at a wedding. He went, some right ugly pigs at this wedding, and like pretty vocally, pretty loud. And the bride, I'd worked with the bride for 9 years, right? So I was like, all right. And then she walked through a few minutes later. So I was like, I want to see this bastard squirm. So I got up and like spoke to the bride and gave her a hug. And then some of her friends from work came out, and this master of ceremonies was like,
this is awkward.
This is awkward. And I was like, just be a bit respectful. You're in a position of privilege. Like, people have basically completely disarmed themselves and trusted what you're doing, and you're just have a bit of respect. And that really kind of hit home for me. Like, just be nice. Just be respectful and nice, and realise the day's way more important than your portfolio or anything like that.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You get what you need. You could do it creatively if you've got the right couples that are bought into you, but it's bigger than you.
I love that point.
So well said. Yeah, really
well
good.
eloquent, innit?
No, I think this is the best spot to start finishing up. But tell us about what you've got planned for the future for the business.
So, in the future, I want to shoot weddings because I think it's a great job to have, even as you get a bit older. Maybe you might not be as cool anymore for the couples. I'm older than a lot of couples now, but I think I can bring the
I
cool.
think your work carries it.
Yeah,
you're okay. You're okay so far, Dan.
You know, and experience plays into that as well. But
and Hannah's very youthful as well, so you've got that on your side.
She does bring the youth. But I think, like, the last couple of years, I've kind of acknowledged what I've achieved and sort of acknowledged what I've got as a basis of learning. And I think, as Sam's probably mentioned on the internet, and you might have seen, that we're now looking to put together a wedding videography course based on the sort of structure that Sam's put together for his photography course, and that'll be where I want to go. And I just feel like it's the right time for me to kind of share what I've done, and give it out.
That's
there.
exactly why I asked you to, if you were keen to explore the idea, because I think you've, over the last 6 to 12 months with me, you've provided me with a huge amount of knowledge that I'm like constantly grateful for.
Yeah.
And I think actually I don't even know if you realise how kind of knowledgeable you are in. I mean, I think you do now because we've talked about it.
I think you can overlook what you've learned.
Yeah,
because it's part. It's just like a baseline of your understanding.
It's natural. It's what you know. But even just hearing you here, there's so much that you got to give. So much.
I could chat for all. Yeah.
I can see a data management podcast from Dan Dolan on the horizon.
Right, there will be some boring sections in the course. All right. Once I get in a terminal and start writing code.
If data management is your thing, Dan is your guy.
Obviously, there'll be some really nice creative stuff as well. But yeah, we do like
2 hour long section.
But I do. That's what I love about you and Hannah is that you have that perfect sort of blend of, you obviously have the technical and solid foundations for setting up your business, but Hannah brings a different side to that, and you complement each other incredibly well. It shows in your work. I love that you've both sort of brought those skills to the table, and you've both grown through that journey.
Yeah,
and supported each other to kind of go, hold on a second there, maybe I could do this a little bit differently. And actually, I think in our industry, often it is quite a lonely experience. It can be a lonely experience, other than when you're at a wedding, and just having that partner to be able to kind of lean on and to get feedback from. And I think that's kind of why we got into doing this podcast, is because we wanted to kind of bring a sense of community to people that maybe on a Monday or a Tuesday are just sat in their office beaving away at Lightroom or Premiere Pro, whatever they're doing, and just to give them a sense of they're not just on their own. And
no, it's totally, because weddings is a tricky one as well, because you're in this bubble. If you shoot 50 weddings a year, and you're in a bubble 50 times a year, seeing the perfect family, the perfect relationships, the perfect behaviour, beautiful people, and it's quite hard not to walk away from that and measure your own life against it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And having stuff like this pulls you back and goes, no, this is where we are.
We've had this discussion before, haven't we, about a friend of yours who we don't need to name names, but
just had to pull himself back and be like, whoa, like you go home and you measure your own family and interactions against a wedding, which is real, but it's a massive enhancement of the real. Yeah. So you can't, and that's
everybody looking perfect, everybody having a great time, having the best party ever.
Like I've driven home from weddings and kind of I've been in that place where you're like, oh man, like that. I wonder if will I have that relationship with my little girl? Like I really hope I do. And then you start just pondering that, and it's like you need to separate that. And you can separate that. You don't, and it's important to, I think, and that's why networks and communities of like-minded people within industries are good, because they can all ground each other.
Yeah.
And my uncle's an undertaker, and that is the industry that completely epitomizes where you have to ground each other. And he said they used to just stand there cracking jokes and laughing over the bodies, which is morbid as hell, but you need that distancing from what you're doing.
I did not expect that to arrive in our conversation.
You can edit that bit out if it loads the time in the end. No, it wasn't COVID.
I was about to say as well, I feel like we're just warming up with this episode. Like, I felt like the last 10-15 minutes we were really kind of finding our groove a little bit. Because we talked about it off camera earlier. Like I still feel like we're finding our feet with this, and
very much
this is a very steep learning curve for both of us, but I genuinely felt like the last 15-20 minutes I've kind of started to really settle into the conversation a bit, and then Dan drops the Undertaker comment.
Got to bring it back to reality.
Anything else that you want to bring to the table, Igor, before we close it out and we go and drink a bottle of whiskey that he's bought us this morning?
No, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Dan, for being here and bringing yourself. And it's amazing to hear from you, and thanks for the audience to carrying on with us. And we can't wait to see what we bring more towards to the podcast. And see you soon.
Thank you very much, guys. Cheers, Dan.
Cheers. See you later.